Welcome in, everybody, to episode 11 of my Pro Unreal Engine developer series here on YouTube. Today is going to be the first of a two-part episode where we work on our input component. And it was going to be a one-parter originally, but I finished recording and the episode would have been well over an hour long, so I decided to break it up into two. So no worries there. But yeah, we have these first two tasks, find and import UE4 first person mesh, and then walk no animations. So just make those two tasks, and we are going to actually make a new epic, which is going to be exciting. So if you're sick of being on the get started epic, congratulations, we're all done with it. Alright, so now that we are in our backlog, we can start making that new epic. So to do that, we are going to go up to epic and click that little label and see that show epic panel. We're going to click that and then we can see all our epics. So then we're going to press create epic at the bottom and we're going to actually call this player character. I call it character by mistake. So just update that to player character. And then you can open it up and press view all details. And we can fill out a short description. So yeah, this is just going to be the player character. And we're actually going to repurpose what we're doing here with the AI character. But more on that later. For now, just focus on getting the player character working. So as you can see, I'm just filling out the description here. And the thing with this task is, in theory, at the end of this, our player character should be completely done and ready to ship as part of the final game. So that's the standard we're upholding this to. Yeah, so feel free to pause and copy that down. And then we want to assign it to us. And we label it art and engineering because they're going to be parts of both with this. And we can save. And see, here is where I rename it player character. Alright, so now we can get rid of the epic label thing. And we want to check get started so we can see that. And for you, these will have no epics, so make sure you have that selected. And we'll click on the first one and we'll write the description for this. And this part about the asset pack, it's kind of funny. I completely forgot that the first person content pack from Epic Games would be the perfect place to get the UE4 arms mesh that we're missing. So I am actually going to take you through the process of getting a plugin from the marketplace and installing it. But in reality, we don't really need it. We're just going to grab what we need from the version of Unreal that we install. So yeah, just copy this down and save that when you're done. Feel free to pause. And we're going to assign it to us. It's an art task. And we can assign it to player character. Alright, so we'll save that. And now we have walk no animations. So this is exactly what it sounds like. We're going to get our player input component going to the point where we can walk and look around the map. And then the next step after this is going to be getting the animations all done for walking. So yeah, inadvertent button press there. But if you click to the side like that, then you can switch the epic. So see, click to the side. and we should be good. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to get character footsteps into the new epic. And don't worry about that task yet, it's a while from now, so don't worry about it. And we'll grab the first two and throw them into our board. And we can deselect that and see our get started epic is finally done. So that's exciting. And we'll get to all the other epics in time, so don't worry about that. Alright, so we go over to our board. And I need to move that get started epic over to done so it goes away, but I forget to do it here. All good. So we're going to move this task into in progress and we're going to get after it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to want to do is search for the Epic Games launcher that we installed last time. Alright, so once we have the launcher open, you should be all signed in. If not, just sign in. And then we open P4V as well and make our new change list. So just call it find and import UE4 first person mesh. All right, looking good. And now we're going to go over to the marketplace and ignore this part where I go to my favorites. I'm just trying to remember what the name of the pack I found was. And again, we don't actually need it, but I'm leaving this in here so you can see what the process of adding a asset is like. So we search for it and we press add to cart because it's free, so we're not going to need to pay. But it's a cool looking pack. Again, we're not going to use it, but we'll add it just to show you the process. Got some reviews in there, very nice. All right, add to cart. And while we're at it, we're going to get the free content for the month. So if you go to there under free, every month they put in new asset packs for free. And because I've been using Unreal for so long, I have quite the collection. And if you just keep doing this every month, you'll really start to stockpile a whole bunch of assets. So this, it's saying we don't have the engine downloaded that we need to use the asset pack. But yeah, we'll wait till this closes. But what we need to do is download Unreal Engine 4. And what's kind of funny is, as I said, when I was downloading Unreal Engine 4, I realized that we'll be better off just taking the mesh from the old version of the engine when the mannequin matches what we need. So at the top, we press the little plus, and I'm checking to see what engine version we need. So see under there, supported engine versions. And we're going to pick 427 and install. And just use the default path is fine. But yeah, this is going to take a while, so just give it all the permissions and everything it asks for. And I'll skip ahead until mine's done. Alright, so we're all installed, so now we can click on to the pack and press install there when we select our engine. And that was relatively quick, so that's good. And we can launch, and it's going to download the prerequisites. And this should be pretty quick. Alright, so allow. And this will actually be good that you guys get to see engine 4.27. This is what the original Hide Seek Survive game that's on Steam now was made in. So part of the reason I'm redoing this is just to give it the upgraded engine. But yeah, it'll be good for you guys to see the old engine and see all the UI changes and some of the stuff you take for granted. So we want games, first person, and you can just use the default location and just call it test project. It doesn't really matter. And create project. And now I'm going to go in here and make sure we have the mesh that we need, which we will. Yep, so there it is. That's what we want. See, it's just the arms, but it's matching that UE4 mannequin, which is the important part. So we can close that down. In this part, I'm going to keep in just to prove a point, but I try to directly import the mesh, and it doesn't work. You'll see. But basically, the process is you need to export it from that project and import it back into Hide Seek Survive. So right now, I'm going to open up Hide Seek Survive and try to import it, and it isn't going to work. So we'll see that. The engine doesn't recognize UAsset as a file type for some reason. It's kind of weird. I think it's a compatibility between the two engine versions issue, but who knows? All right, so we're going to go into characters, make a new folder, call it meshes, and see here is when I try to do the import. So by default, it'll just be in your documents. And see, I navigate to it and I can't find anything. So kind of odd. But then I'll navigate to it in File Explorer. And I'm going to find that this doesn't work either. See how there that UAsset file type? And see we get the error unknown extension UAsset. It must be something to do with the change in engine version, because that should work. Right, we see a little bit of panicking here because I'm trying to see what the other one is called. Yeah, so we're gonna have to go back in there and re-export it. And now I'm gonna try again. Oh, nope, we're gonna close out. Yeah, so now I'm gonna try to open it up and see it fails to launch. So if you ever get that issue, what you can do is just launch directly from the Epic launcher. Yeah, so just ignore this. That part doesn't work. I haven't worked in a Blueprint project in quite some time, so I'm a little rusty with how to launch. But yeah, you could just launch the engine just like this, and this will work. And then we have our project, open project. And now what we're going to do is use the export tool to change our mesh here into a readable format. So right click, export, and we're going to navigate to our project file. And we'll go into the non-engine content and make one called meshes and another folder. We can call it UE for arms and press save. Save again and export. Just use the default settings is fine. And we actually only really care about that mesh. We don't even need the skeleton, honestly. And I'm going to make sure they're there before I close down the engine. And see, we can see that FBX, and that's what we need. Alright, so we're going to throw open hide, seek, survive now, and we're going to import those assets. Alright, so we're in our meshes folder we made, and we go to import and navigate to that arms folder and import it. And for the skeleton, we want to pick the UE4 one. So it should be in characters, mannequin, UE4 meshes. So pick that skeleton, or else it's not going to work. And you can create the materials or not, it doesn't really matter. We're going to use the other material anyways. So save real quick. And you can ignore that. Won't be a big deal. And yeah, see, the material doesn't look very good. We can swap it to the one we're using for the actual UE4 mannequin. So see, we can use this UE4 body, and see that looks a lot better. So we can save now. Alright, looking good. And now we can go to our character. So core characters. Open up the full editor. And now we go to our first person mesh and swap it in with the new arms. And you're going to have to check it out. But yeah, see, now the arms look like the other arms. And we can do use animation asset and use our placement frame and see how they're exactly the same. That's what we're looking for. So now when we press play, we can see that placement frame animation that you worked so hard on the other day. And see they're all perfectly on top of each other. So that's great. And now we can delete the build and get this into review. So per usual, just delete the old build and then we'll package it up. Alright, and I'll fast forward until mine is done. Alright, and we're all done packaging. So we can test out the build and make sure everything looks okay. Yeah, and our build looks fine. So we can close it down. Oh, and by the way, if you're running low on storage space, feel free to delete that test project and the engine version that we just installed. So just go on the Epic Games launcher and delete it, and you'll be fine. But yeah, so now we can commit everything here. So workspace. And we should have everything except for... Yeah, so I mark for add, but then see how it pops up right before I press OK. So yeah, it captured all the content stuff by default. So we'll add it to our numbered change list. What it didn't get was the non-engine content. So we'll add that meshes folder, and that should pick up everything. So yeah, see, we have everything added now, so that's good. And we can send this on its way and throw that into done. And we'll add our usual comment so that the change list was 43 and we're all set. And now we can move on to our walk no animations task. All right, so we'll open up our solution. And for today, we're just gonna get working on the input component because this video is already getting pretty long. So we just need to make sure we have all the files we need opened. And we're going to need the CCS character, .h, and .cpp. And we're also going to need the movement component and the input component. And don't worry, today we're just going to call it after we're done with the input component .h. Because I like to keep these episodes somewhere between 30 and 40 minutes. So this is the perfect breaking point for today. All right, so we have the input component ccs.h. And we're going to make some changes here. So don't worry, I'm going to paste in a whole bunch of code. And we're going to go line by line through what it means. All right, so this first region, you should have this already from last time. Well, I guess it was a couple of times ago. We just have our constructor and our tick function. So that's not new. That's what we had before. And then we have this command input functions section. And this is all new. So when you're playing a game like this, you can be on mouse and key or controller, obviously. And that's why we need to have a different function for controller and mouse and key for move and look. Because we want to be automatically detecting whether or not the player is on controller or not. And that's the main function for this, because we need to apply the different sensitivities, which is different based on if the player is on mouse or controller. So yeah, just copy this down and don't worry about the red underlines. We're going to fix that later. So just pause and copy down these two functions. Yeah, so we need one for looking and walking. And once we call these functions, they're going to call a process input function that will be exactly the same no matter if you're on mouse and key or controller. And this might seem like a little bit of overkill now, but it really isn't. And yeah, now we just have the counterparts for mouse. So as you can see, it's pretty much the exact same description. But just, yeah, pause and copy this down as well, and then close off the region. And that F input action value is what's called a struct. And a struct is basically a dumbed down version of a class. It can have functions on it, but typically it's declared within a class and it's used to hold data. So a good example of that would be like you could have your weapon stats would be a good place to use a struct. And now we're going to move on. We have the input mapping contexts. So now we're going to declare a few variables. And again, don't worry about the underline. We haven't defined this type yet. So we have that. And what this is Unreal introduced a new input system in UE5 where you can actually layer different input contexts over each other. So this used to be a big issue where, say, you want to have a default gameplay mode, and then when somebody opens up a menu, you want to have a menu mode. So you used to have to do all sorts of weird workarounds to make that happen, but now it's built in by default, and we just need that initial one. And now we have the input actions, and these are basically little actions that we're going to have for each input. So as you can see, we have move controller, look controller, move mouse, and look mouse. So just fill that all out, and then you can pause and continue on when you're ready. But yeah, this is the new input system in UE5, and just be happy for all those people out there who don't have to deal with the old input system, because this is a pretty drastic improvement based on what it used to be. Alright, so we'll move down, and begin play should be the same. And then we have our process input functions. And this is basically we're taking in a value of the X and Y input and applying that input to the character. And we put this in the protected region because other classes shouldn't be calling this. Other classes should be calling the command function, and that command function will call these. So that's why we have it set up like this, to have that level of what's called abstraction. And then we have our get and check reference functions. And basically, why we need this is we need references to the player character and the player controller to correctly apply these inputs. So before we go off and get some null pointer errors, which again, as I explained last time, means that you're pointing to a place in memory where there is nothing to point to, and that will crash the engine. So that's why it's very important to check these things, and using these functions is the best way to do it in my experience. Alright, so then below that, we have our input settings. So we have things like the sensitivity for controller, the dead zone, and then the mouse sensitivity. So the key for this is we want to break this up for settings and parameters. And settings are things that are going to be saved, not now, but eventually, because we don't want players to have to re enter their sensitivity every time. And we'll take care of that eventually, but for now, we're just going to hard code some default values in here. So that'll be fine for now. But yeah, the settings are things that we're going to expose to the player in a menu and that we're going to remember via a save game. But don't worry about the save game yet, we'll figure that out eventually. And then we have input parameters, and these are variables that aren't exposed to the player. They can also just be called constants, except for that be on controller flag, because sometimes we're going to want to know if the player is on controller or mouse and key. And this will come up, like, for example, if we're showing the controller setup, like the controls for the game, we want to show them the right input. So yeah, that's why that's important, and we're going to be updating that live as the player plays the game. And we'll take care of that in the .cpp file. And then here, we're just going to have a references region. And as you can see, we have that U property to make sure that these references aren't being blown away in the garbage collector. So just like last time. But yeah, again, don't worry about the red underlines. We're going to fix these right now. But we need the character and the player controller in order to make the input component work properly. All right, so we'll copy the player controller and we'll do some forward declarations to get all this working. All right, so we declare the player controller and we'll do the character next. Then we'll do the input action value. And remember, this is a struct. So we have to say struct f input action value. And it's also good notation to leave a space in between the classes and the structs that we're forward declaring. So yeah, we have that structure in there. And now we just need to forward declare the input actions, I believe. Oh, the mapping context as well. So we'll take care of the mapping context. All right, it should be happy now. And last but not least, the input action. All right, cool. And I think at this point, all our errors are gone. And this is where we're going to call it for today because we have a lot left to do. And I don't want to make this video like an hour and 20 minutes long. I know we've been starting and stopping each video, finishing a task, but unfortunately, with game development in Unreal, it's just the reality that some things are going to take longer than 40 minutes. So I'm just going to make a part 1 and a part 2 of this video. So stay tuned for the thrilling conclusion on Saturday. But yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching. Definitely leave a like and a comment if you have any feedback about what I'm doing here or what I should change about these videos. I tried to go a lot slower with the code today, so I had more time to explain what was happening. And let me know if you appreciate that or I should speed things up a little bit. And yeah, definitely subscribe to the channel to keep up with the future releases of videos. As I said, it'll be Wednesday and Saturday nights Eastern Time moving forward. So definitely stay tuned for that. And with all that being said, thank you so much again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.